The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is George Yorling, and I'm the Director of Medical and Scientific Affairs here at HDSA, and I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining our latest research webinar series. Today we have Joe Giuliano, who is the Director of Clinical Operations at the CHDI Foundation in Princeton, New Jersey, and he's going to be speaking to us about Enroll HD. Joe has been at CHDI since 2008. Before that, he has many years of both academic and pharmaceutical research and development experience. Before CHDI, he was actually at GE Healthcare as the head of clinical project management, where he led a clinical operations team in North America. And he successfully led a team that recruited and set up a global PET, or positron emission tomography investigator network for a CNS and oncology program. So you can see how this experience that he had really served him well as he worked to set up this global observational study Enroll, which we'll be hearing about. So Joe received his degrees in chemistry and nursing at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and we're very excited to hear what he has to say about the update on Enroll. Before we turn it over to Joe, for those new to the research webinar series, on the right you'll see a box, and in that box you can go under questions, and in the questionnaire, which I've highlighted in red, just type the question and that will come to us here in the New York office when we can ask Joe the question, any questions you may have on your behalf. You can type them at any point during the seminar. And at the end, we'll go through as many questions as we have time for. For those, if you want to see this again or know people who couldn't join us at this time and would like to view this at a later point, we are recording and archiving this on our website, and it can be all viewed within 1 week of this presentation at the website shown here at hdsa.org/research-webinar. And this is just some of our upcoming schedule. Next month we will not have a formal webinar in lieu of the HDSA Convention Research Forum, which will be taking place on Saturday, June 22nd from 9 to 12, and that will all be webcast, so hopefully you'll be able, if you can't attend in person, you'll be able to join over the internet. And in July we'll have Dr. Peg Paulus from University of Iowa, and she'll be speaking on the Kids HD observational study. And finally, if there are any suggestions for future webinars, feel free to email us at researchupdates@hdsa.org, and we will do our best to find a speaker on the topic that you desire. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe, whose topic or title of his presentation today is Enroll, a Global Observational Study of Huntington's Disease. So Joe, we'll just turn.
Thank you, George.
Okay, there you go.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, George. Thanks for the invitation to speak, and I'd like to thank the HDSA for all of their support and also help with getting Enroll HD off the ground in North America. As George said, I'm going to talk about Enroll HD, which is a worldwide observational study for Huntington's disease families. And I'd like to hopefully get across during this seminar the fact that Enroll HD is a little bit more than an observational study. It's different, and it holds a lot of potential for supporting and helping answer some important research questions about Huntington's disease. So Enroll HD has three main goals. The first goal is to improve our understanding of Huntington's disease and find out what factors influence the progression of the disease. The second is to foster good clinical care and improve the health of the participants. And finally, our third goal is to enhance the design and expedite the conduct of clinical trials. I'm going to talk in more detail later in my presentation about exactly how Enroll HD is going to help expedite clinical trials in the future. Enroll HD is a global observational longitudinal study of Huntington's disease. In Enroll HD, like the other observational studies, the cohort study and the registry study, we collect a common set of information from all of our participants at all of the sites around the world. So the data set that are collected from each of the participants is standardized across all the centers. We also collect biospecimens, specifically blood samples for DNA and for cell lines. All of the data and the samples that we collect will be available to share with researchers to answer important questions about Huntington's disease. This is one of the most important aspects of Enroll HD, is the methods that we're going to be using for sharing data and getting global research centers involved in answering questions about HD. Enroll HD is going to provide a platform to help fill important gaps in knowledge. So when I think of a platform, I think of, obviously, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is a train platform, which is something that gives you access to the train so you can get from point A to point B. Also, think about a beautiful lake and a swimming platform out in the middle of the lake. It gives you access to enjoying that lake. Enroll HD is a research platform, and it allows researchers to get access to data and biospecimens so that they can answer important questions and close the gaps in knowledge. The first knowledge gap that we hope to help address is to have a better understanding of HD in people with HD. Now you might say, well, obviously people get HD, but a lot of work that has been done in the past has looked at HD in different animal models, and this is important work. But we also have to do the hard work of understanding HD in people so that we can translate back and forth between what's going on in the animal models of HD and what's going on in the biology in human beings. That's still a gap in our knowledge, is trying to understand exactly what Huntington's disease does in people. Secondly, improve the clinical care. An important aspect of Enroll HD is improving care and finding out exactly what kind of interventions improve the quality of people's lives with Huntington's disease. Since Enroll HD will be a global study that includes a lot of people on a lot of different treatments, not only pharmacologic treatments, but also non-pharmacologic treatments like occupational therapy and physical therapy, we'll be able to design studies and design research that's going to be able to tell us a little bit more about which one of those interventions actually makes a difference in how people feel and how people are able to function. This is obviously an extremely important question, and it's a question that needs to be answered even after we find treatments for Huntington's disease, so that we can ensure that we're able to improve the quality of life of people. We have a clinical care improvement committee that just had its inaugural meeting a few weeks ago in New York City, and Martha Nance in Minnesota is the chairperson of this clinical care improvement committee for Enroll HD. So we're really excited about the work of this committee and also partnering with organizations like the HDSA and others. Another important gap is making sure that we execute the best and the smartest clinical trials possible. Now, what does that mean? Are there clinical trials that are not as smart as other clinical trials? What I mean by that is that the design of a clinical trial and the endpoints, those are the things that we measure to see if a drug or an intervention is working or not, need to be carefully designed and validated to ensure that if the intervention or drug does have an effect on the disease, that we'll be able to measure it. Enroll HD is designed to help validate and develop new measurement tools that can be implemented in clinical trials. We have a mechanism called sub-studies where researchers can implement new measurement tools like questionnaires, interviews, things that measure everything from symptoms of psychological symptoms to cognitive symptoms, that is the ability for people to think, and to test those in people with HD to ensure that they are able to measure the endpoints that will be useful in clinical trials. And finally, probably one of the most important things, Enroll HD will help us to identify study participants in an efficient and fast way so that we can get our clinical trials recruited as quickly as possible and get the answers to the questions that these clinical trials are going to ask, get those answers as quickly as we possibly can. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about how Enroll HD can help study participants get into clinical trials. So who can participate in Enroll HD? Well, Enroll HD is a family study, so the whole family can participate. Spouses and partners of people with HD can participate. If you carry the expansion mutation and you're symptomatic or pre-symptomatic, you can participate. If your gene status is unknown, you're at risk, you can participate. And in addition, we have a special mechanism where the genotyping that's done in the context of Enroll HD is kept completely confidential. Your doctor doesn't know the result. You don't know the result. The team that runs the study doesn't know the result. There's a separate data safety monitoring board that is made up of 5 independent physicians, and they're the only individuals that see the results and see the numbers of the participants that are attached to those results. And this data safety monitoring committee will monitor these procedures and make sure that this is kept confidential. So if you're an at-risk individual and you'd really like to participate in Enroll HD, but you're not interested in knowing what your gene status is, you can do that with confidence because that information will be kept confidential. For people who do want to know what their gene status is, the Enroll HD study is not going to be the mechanism for you to get those results. You still have to work with your physician, genetic counselors, to go through the testing process at the institution. Finally, if you're someone who is a member of a family and you don't carry the expansion mutation, you're also welcome to participate in Enroll as well. The Enroll HD visit takes about 1 to 2 hours. It's an annual visit. You're asked questions about your health status, your thinking, behaviors, feelings, lifestyle. That's asked in a variety of ways using questionnaires and interviews. There's a neurologic exam. There's also the blood sampling that is done for genotyping at the very beginning of the study. And again, as I said, it's not disclosed. And for biobanking, there is an optional blood draw at the baseline visit and the follow-up visits, and this allows us to collect additional samples for biobanking for future research purposes. Enroll HD also provides travel support. So everyone who comes to the center and is in Enroll HD will receive support to defer the costs of their travel. I've said a lot about data sharing and biosamples and testing results that are kept confidential. And I just wanted to spend a little bit of time to share with you how we keep those information secure and maintain your identity, the confidentiality of your identity. First of all the data that is collected is coded. So no information that's put into the Enroll HD database can identify you by name, address, or any other unique identifying characteristic. So the data is associated with a number. And that number is a 9-digit number called the HD ID. And this 9-digit number is generated at your first Enroll HD visit. And that's the number that appears in the database with all of your data. All the data that is shared with other researchers, including the biosamples, are recoded before they are shared with other researchers and cannot be traced to you. So even though at your doctor's office this HD ID may be kept in a secure place and it may be attached to your name and address, when the data is shared with other researchers, this number is removed and a new random number is assigned. So the researchers that are using the data and the biosamples will not be able to trace that information back to you. In addition, the computer systems that we use are all secured. All of the data and the database is controlled by password protection, and the data storage, the place where the data is actually stored, is protected, and it's located in a secure facility. Now, obviously, we go to great pains to make sure that your information is kept confidential and that your identity is not associated with any of the data. I wish we could make a 100% guarantee of that, but we can never make a 100% guarantee, but we do everything possible to protect your identity and make sure that the data is confidential, and we take that very seriously. So how is Enroll HD different? A lot of people ask me the question, you know, we've done cohort and we've done the registry study. Why do we need another observational study of Huntington's disease? Well, there's a couple reasons I think that distinguish Enroll HD from other efforts. Enroll HD is truly a global effort. And with the inclusion of Latin America along with Europe and North America and the future inclusion of possibly some Asian countries, it really is a global effort. And we're seeing more and more that the clinical trials, the clinical development efforts, looking at new therapies, are being done on a global scale as well. So Enroll HD as an observational study and as a platform is aligning itself with these other global efforts in clinical trial development. Like I said, Enroll HD really is a platform, and this platform concept is important and different from the others. The study can be used by different researchers to answer important research questions about Huntington's disease. The data will be shared with other qualified researchers to help them get projects completed and further research in Huntington's disease. And finally, I think it's the focus on data sharing with researchers that really makes a big difference. And for those of us that work in the research field, we know that this effort to share data and open up the use of that data to other qualified researchers who may have new ideas and new approaches to things is really important for us to make some breakthroughs and understand Huntington's disease better. This gives you an idea of the global scope of Huntington's disease, of Enroll HD, and how it's being rolled out across the globe. So how can Enroll HD help with recruitment into clinical trials? This is just a print ad that I got from the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. It says, what does hope look like? It looks like people with type 1 diabetes who get involved in their own cure. When those of us who do clinical trials think about recruiting participants in clinical trials, we think of a funnel. And we think of how a large group of eligible participants starts sort of at the top of the funnel, and as we work our way through the recruitment process, that is, we identify people who, A, have the disease, people who are eligible for that specific clinical trial given the criteria for including or excluding people from that clinical trial. And when we get down to actually approaching people and asking them if they'll participate in the clinical trial, the number goes down. So you start out with a large number of participants that are possibly eligible, and we go down to a few people who actually say yes and will participate in the clinical trial. So how can Enroll HD help with enrollment in a clinical trial? This is an example of a list of participants at a site in Enroll HD. This is a site that has 12 participants in Enroll HD. This site, this doctor has decided to do this clinical trial in Huntington's disease. And most clinical trials, as you probably know, have very particular criteria that tell the doctor which patients can be included and which ones need to be excluded. And usually this is determined by the medications that they're on, maybe the length of time that they've had the disease, and other important factors. So for Enroll HD, what we're able to do is take the characteristics that's in the database for these 12 participants, thinking about what the clinical trial inclusion-exclusion criteria are, and we'll be able to determine the participants at that site who could potentially be eligible for the study. Now, keep in mind that the Enroll HD database just has 9-digit HD IDs. We don't have any names associated with the data. So what we would do is turn those numbers over to the physician investigator at that site, and the physician investigator at that site can contact those individuals who are potentially eligible. This saves an enormous amount of time and really promotes efficiency. It takes a long time to be able to see the number of patients that you need to see at your site and ask each and every one of them to determine who's going to actually participate. Now these are the numbers that sort of help us calculate the number of potentially eligible participants. So if we look over here on the left-hand side, we start off with the largest number, which is the number of people in the U.S. who have Huntington's disease. Then we go down to the number of participants who have actually enrolled in Enroll HD. And the assumption we make is that about 30% of all of the people will enroll in Enroll HD. Then once we have a clinical trial protocol and we know the inclusion-exclusion criteria, we can decrease the number even more, maybe looking at 30% of the participants in all of Enroll HD as those who are possibly eligible. And then finally, after we determine who has the right characteristics for the study and who actually wants to participate, we have the final number of people who could be enrolled. So if we have, let's say, 30,000 people, we know that this is probably a low number, who have HD, symptomatic HD in the U.S. Of those, 10,000 are in Enroll HD. When we look at the data and we factor in the protocol inclusion and exclusion criteria, we see that there's potentially 3,000 of those 10,000 who are possibly eligible. Then we assume that about 6%, and this is a high number, for breast cancer, for example, about 3% of the people who have breast cancer who are potentially eligible for a clinical trial actually participate. So it's a relatively low number, but we're thinking that we can double that in HD. So in this scenario that I just described, we can get about 200 people into the clinical trial pretty quickly in the United States. Now, if we don't get 10,000 people in Enroll HD and the number is actually 3,000 people, you can see how this has a downstream effect on the number of potentially eligible and ultimately less than half of what we originally anticipated. So I think the numbers tell the story. So what's the current status of Enroll? First of all, we have a total of 613 participants who are enrolled, and that's of yesterday. 34 of 54 sites in North America are currently active. 452 participants in the U.S. are enrolled. We anticipate our first site in Latin America, and it'll be in Argentina, to be up and running on the 27th of May. Australia and New Zealand will begin in August 2013, and we will begin the transition of all the European investigators and sites and participants, of which there's about close to 11,000 participants in Europe in the registry study. We'll begin that transition in September 2013. Enroll HD is on the web. This is our website, www.enroll-hd.org. We have a functional website right now, and we're upgrading that over the next several months, and we'll be launching a new website soon. We're also on the Registry of Patient Registries, which is run by the Agency of Healthcare for Healthcare Research and Quality, and we're also on clinicaltrials.gov, and clinicaltrials.gov is updated. We update that monthly with all of the new sites that have been IRB approved for starting. So what can you do? You can make Enroll HD your study. I think hopefully I've been able to convince you that Enroll HD is more than just a study, but it's a research platform. And for it to be a successful research platform to really make a huge difference, participants need to enroll. And by making this your study and making this your project, you can make a big difference. Be informed about Enroll HD and what's happening by visiting the website. Pass on the word to others. If we can get every support group, if we can get every support group and family involved in Enroll HD, we'll be very successful. Be a champion for Enroll HD and get involved. So there's a lot of people who are behind this project and are working extremely hard to get it off the ground and make it meet its potential. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the HD patients and their families for giving of themselves and participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. This was great. If you just give me a minute, I will try to pull up a few questions that people have been asking during your talk. First question was in relation to cohort, and the question was, I'm trying to paraphrase, was is Enroll taking the information that's already collected from cohort and putting it and collating it with into the file for Enroll HD?
That's a great question. That's the ultimate plan, is to take the data from cohort and migrate it into Enroll HD so that we have a longitudinal data set for all of the people who participated in cohort. And if you'll notice, if you enroll in Enroll HD, the consent form indicates that it asks you if you are a former cohort participant, if you would agree to allow us to do that. And that is to migrate the data and also the biologic samples that have been collected and include that in Enroll HD. So that's the plan, and we're talking to people at the Huntington Study Group and also some technical people about how the migration would go, and it's our hope that that will happen soon.
Great. There's a question coming all the way from India, which is fantastic that people are dialing in. Joe, you mentioned that Asia was on the list of, for future planning. The question in India was, are there any dates for when we might see some Enroll sites in India? And the second part was, if it's, if there's an HD patient in India, what is the best way for them to join or participate in Enroll?
Yeah. So so the Asian connection is through one of our steering committee members, Professor Jean-Marc Burgunder, who has done a lot of work in China, in fact, and has spent many years training sites in China and working with neurologists and psychiatrists in China to set up a network, and CHDI is happy to say that we're providing some support for that, and we may be able to include some centers in Enroll HD. but it won't be until probably 2015 or 2016. There's so much work to be done on sort of the existing infrastructure that we're trying to get up and running. India's a very interesting country, obviously a country that we would be very interested in. I've had a lot of discussions with neurologists and physicians who see Huntington's disease patients in India about potential participation in the future, and we'll see how that goes. As far as someone in India participating in Enroll HD, it's unless you can get to a center that is approved by ethics committee and up and running with the study, it would be difficult. But if you could get to a center, that's one possibility.
Great. There's another question about the remaining, I guess it's what's the roadmap for the remaining North American sites, specifically the Northeast? And maybe I can try to address this question. And Joe, you chime in. On HDSA, and I'm sure maybe on the Enroll HD site as well, but we are closely monitoring any updates for new active sites for Enroll HD. So you can go to the clinical trials website within HDSA and click on the map of the United States on your state, and you'll see where there is an active Enroll HD site. Are there plans you have?
I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
There's 54 sites currently active or are getting ready to ramp up. Are there? How many more do you expect in North America?
Well, so thanks for bringing that up, George. I forgot to mention that, and that is a great resource for patients and families to see where the sites are and how they can access them. So just about every week, somebody contacts me from another center to become part of Enroll HD in the U.S. Most recently, Vanderbilt University, for example, is in Tennessee is going to be participating in Enroll HD. We don't have any specific number to cap the study at, George, but obviously when you start getting into very high numbers of centers, it's hard to sort of maintain high quality data just because there's a lot of variability. So we are going to expand Enroll HD and add centers that make sense. There's a lot of areas of the country, if you look at that map, that seem to be underserved. And obviously we're interested in finding centers and sites in those areas that are underserved so that family members and patients can get access to the study.
Okay. Another question about coming from someone who's already enrolled or is already a participant in cohort. Should I get into Enroll? I'm assuming that, is this going to be something they have to opt into, or is it automatically done?
No, you have to act. So you have to contact your doctor and tell them that you want to be in Enroll. And obviously when you talk to your doctor, you have to talk to your doctor and make sure that this is right for you. And if your doctor is an investigator, an Enroll HD investigator, he or she should be able to tell you everything you need to know about Enroll. But you do have to act. You're not just going to automatically be included in Enroll HD. And if you can bring the rest of the family along, that would be great.
Okay. So, Joe, you could be it is conceivable and allowable with Enroll HD to be in multiple observational trials like Predict as well as Enroll. Is that
As far as so the short answer is yes.
okay?
That's the whole idea. Is Enroll as a platform, so you can be in Enroll HD and still participate in clinical trials. In fact, by being involved in Enroll HD, we would hope that it would be quicker for you to find out about clinical trials. That doesn't mean that you'll be eligible, but certainly can find out about them. For Predict, it's a different situation because Predict and Enroll HD have a lot of overlapping information that they're gathering. The Predict team had some concerns about repeat measures on some of the cognitive tests. And what we've agreed to with the Predict team is that if you're in Predict, stay in Predict. You can't be in Enroll and Predict at the same time. But once Predict is over, we have a plan that we've worked out with the Predict team so that you can roll over into the Enroll HD study. So if you're in Predict, stay there, go to your visits, and once Predict is over, everybody from Predict who wants to, obviously you have to, you're free to make whatever decision you want. If you want to, you can go into Enroll HD.
Okay. That's great. That was a question that's come up several times here. Thank you for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to participate in Enroll and there's no site near them, what's the best thing that you would recommend they do?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, like I said, there's some travel support that's available for Enroll HD. So if there's a site that you can travel to, you'll get travel support. I think if you have to travel the longest, like over 100 miles, you'll get $75 to defer the costs. But in many cases, that's not even possible. If there are other people and families in a specific area where it might make sense to have an Enroll HD site, we could look into that as well. We have one example in the U.S. of a support group with about 50 people in the support group that wanted to have a site in their town, and they partnered with the local medical school and a physician there and a coordinator there, and they were able to start an Enroll HD site, and the support group has made the commitment for everybody to get into Enroll. So that worked out well. That's another option.
Joe, besides travel compensation, are participants financially compensated for their time during that site visit?
No.
Okay.
The only support that we provide is the support for travel to defer the travel costs.
Okay. Another question is there any way that if a participant joins Enroll that their insurance company will find out that they are a participant in Enroll HD?
It's highly unlikely. The data protection and confidentiality that we maintain is maintained. How should I say this? For any entity or individual who wants to get access to the data. So an insurance company cannot get access to the data.
Okay.
And there's no billing that goes on or anything like that. We pay the Enroll HD investigators, the doctors, the nurses, to conduct the study. So they get paid by from the foundation to do the work of the study. You know, there's really no reason for the insurance company to find out about that. That's a very good question and a big concern for many people.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Joe. I have one last question as a researcher. I think this is fantastic that there's going to be biobanking of blood, DNA, other materials for future research. Can you talk about the process for which, you know, down the road that a promising young HD researcher could, you know, submit a proposal and gain access to these valuable materials?
Yes. We're working out the final details of that procedure, but it goes like this. There's a scientific planning committee, which is a committee that's part of the governance for Enroll HD. It's made up of Huntington's disease researchers from around the world, and the scientific planning committee sets the sort of the priorities and the goals for the research that Enroll HD would support. We also have a scientific publication review committee, and this is made up of physicians and researchers from around the world. They're actually people who are elected from their regions to be a part of this committee. And this is the committee that actually reviews the qualifications of the researchers who ask for access to the data and the biological samples. So if you're a young researcher, you would fill out an application. The scientific publication review committee would look and make sure that the person has the qualifications that they need in order to carry out the research that they're proposing. It's a very light review because we want to make sure that, and we believe strongly that participants in the study want their data and want their samples shared for research purposes. So we don't want a long and arduous review process. So if you're qualified, you will get access to the data. The data would be accessed using a secure server. You would have to sign a confidentiality agreement that promises that you will not try to identify any participants. That's another way that we try to protect people's identity. And if you want biosamples, there's another agreement. We call it a material transfer agreement that you would sign, and we would you'd be able to look on an online catalog at all of the materials that are available, and you can order the material and the clinical data that will be useful for your research. So we have some controls in place that make sure that people who are accessing the data and accessing the samples are people can actually do the work that they say they can do. So it's a light review process. And in addition to that, we have some agreements that people have to sign, which are pretty standard in the industry, to make sure that they'll use the data and the information for the purposes that they intend. But we want young and old and experienced and inexperienced researchers to access this material and access this data and work with it, because we think the more people who get access to it, the more people who work with it, the more people who apply new cutting-edge techniques, the chances of us finding out new things and learning new things is going to increase over time. And there's examples in Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease where this is true. And we want to make that available for Huntington's disease as well.
That's great. So I assume that there's safeguards in place then that when that researcher does, perform the, has an interesting study using Enroll material, they will be forced to disclose those results and data immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yep, absolutely. And any raw data that may be generated in the process, we ask them to put that raw data back into the system so that that can be made available to other researchers as well. Yes.
Great. And one last question, Joe, and then we'll let you off the hook. This just came in. If you start at
It's been fun.
if you start at one Enroll site, and you're traveling to it, and then one becomes available that's closer to your home, can you switch to that closer site?
Yes, you can.
Great.
And we have a procedure that in place that allows you to switch from one to the other. No problem.
Awesome. All right, Joe. Well, that is it from here. On behalf of HDSA and the entire community, I really want to thank you, Joe, for putting this great talk together and informing us about the latest progress in Enroll. And we look forward to seeing you all, or hopefully you can join us in June at the Research Forum on June 22nd, which will be on the web. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Joe.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Bye.
Bye-bye.